and Mei turned around and silenced her instantly. That wasn't anything like a dirty girl. Who are you calling a girl, Hag? Wow. Which? That's enough, both of you, Naruto said, slurring his words, waving his hand in front of the door and opening it. Marishishi, you should show some respect to your Mizukichi. Hello, Naruto-sensei, said the blonde with a cute pout, while Mei smiled triumphantly. Mei, you shouldn't let yourself get drawn into an argument so easily. Hello, Naruto-kun. The roles had been reversed from a moment ago. And you, Zabuza, you need to stop taking notes on how I scold people. You'll never be as good at it as I am. A hint of ki seeped into his words, and the swordsman was sweating slightly from the pressure. I get you, but seriously, stop writing down what I say. I don't need to be quoted. A small voice rounded the corner. Naruto felt like crawling into a hole after hearing what they were saying. And then Naruto said, Sasuke, you need to train harder. I wouldn't protect you if I knew you'd go berserk at the first sign of danger. He sounded like a total idiot. The little boy looked at the group, standing in the doorway. Who are you? You'd better ask how the hell you got in. Sasuke, if you're going to quote me, at least do it right. Yes, use a notepad like me, Zabuza exclaimed, holding his pen and paper up in the air for all to see. Yes, use a no-no, Sasuke, don't listen to that man. Naruto-sensei? Yes, in person, well, almost. Naruto chuckled at his own joke, which made the Kiri group frown. They're with me. I'm the one who let them in. Any other questions? Sasuke shook his head. Naruto and Kiri's group walked slowly past them. Naruto's coat opened just enough to make the little Uchiha gasp. Naruto paid him no mind, more focused on getting inside and relaxing. First things first. He walked over to the bank and deposited Sakura carefully. It's about time. Do you even know how much heat you generate, Naruto? Oh, tell that to Sakura-chan. The flirtatious voice came from the reddish-brown-haired woman next to Naruto. You know what? Forget what I said. With that, the sword simply stopped talking, content to just sit there. Naruto rummaged inside his coat for another moment, pulled out a scroll, and placed it on the table next to his companion. He led the group through the corridors. A few gasps were heard as they admired the art on the walls. He quickly showed them to their rooms. As always, the open ones were free, the closed ones occupied. Mei, feeling bolder than last time, took the room next to hers. Kiri ninjas followed them down the corridor with their spikes. If you'll excuse me, there's something I must attend to. A bolt of lightning struck where Naruto had been standing. The man vanished, leaving the group stunned. Yugao stood by the small lake in the training grounds, her gaze fixed on her surroundings. She felt someone watching her, but no matter where she looked, she couldn't locate the hidden observer. A large hand landed on her shoulder, leaving her frozen, unsure what to do now that she'd been caught off guard. Hey! Tilting her head to the side, her cat mask appeared before her eyes, and she frowned slightly. I can leave if you wish, Naruto-sama. He tried to pull away from her hand, but the task proved almost impossible. It was like a steel clamp. I wouldn't stop you if that's what I wanted. Her voice was soft, her grip on his shoulder loosening, though not by much. What do you want then? She asked, her eyes studying his face. I want you to take off your mask. I want to see your face when I speak to you. She froze. Was he asking her to break the rules? You remove it. His hand slowly released her shoulder, tracing the side of her face before sliding his fingers beneath the mask, gently grasping it and pulling it away. Her hazel eyes widened as they met Naruto's red gaze. I wanted to apologize. I was angry, trying to find myself again. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. He broke off as she crashed into his chest. His arms wrapped around her, holding her tightly. A few seconds passed. She backed away slowly, frightened, her movements robotic and rigid, her hand clutching her open coat, showing she hadn't imagined it. It's a farewell gift. Sakura, and I'll fix it soon, he replied almost on autopilot. But Sakura is only a genin? Yugao asked with a silly look on her face. Naruto looked at her strangely for a few moments, before realizing, no, my Sakura, no la genin Sakura. Can your sword do things like that? Did she say she could? Sakura, can you speak? The Umbu's eyes opened in confusion, It was almost unthinkable. It's a very long story. I'm off duty, and besides, you smell like smallpox. He gave him a light nudge in the chest, with a slight smile on his face. Well, you got me. Naruto smiled slightly, tucking Yugao's mask into his belt, pulling a pack of Pocky from his pocket, and using his chakra cords to pop one into his mouth. Yugao found the action sad. Even though she'd said she'd get her arm back, the fact that she'd already adjusted to life without it showed that time had passed. The two stayed there in the water, chatting for hours, catching up, talking about how they'd been training, or rather, the lack thereof in Naruto's case. His confession made the ANBU laugh, unable to imagine Naruto going more than a week without training. He told her about his battle against the Three Tails, and she was speechless the whole time. Wait, you just destroyed a bijou using an unknown release. His answer received a shy nod from Naruto. Don't you think that's awesome? What? I never said it wasn't cool, just that it was stupid. I hadn't even perfected chakra manipulation, but I used a jutsu. Honestly, I think I was lucky it didn't explode in my face. Naruto looked at the pack of Pocky in his hands. It's empty. His head slowly turned toward Yugao, one of his hands sliding behind her back. A playful look crossed his face. What's up, Naruto? I ran out of money. He looked at her dejectedly, holding the empty package. The purple-haired Umbu took a stick in her hand, slowly bringing it to her mouth and taking out a good-sized piece. I only have a little bit left, but you'll have to get it. He placed the last tiny piece on his tongue and brought it back to his mouth with a wide smile on his face. Naruto moved faster than she could blink. The height difference between them was astonishing, even at this close proximity. His right hand was firmly placed on her waist, pulling her even closer. The only thing separating their bodies was the clothing they wore. She tilted her head back as he lowered it. She quickly stuck out her tongue, showing that the Pocky stick was still in place. Naruto's arm encircled her, lifting her slightly, his breath tickling her mouth. As quickly as he'd arrived, Naruto returned to where she was, a wad of Pocky in his hands. Stop stealing my Pocky, he pouted, and they both shared a brief laugh. It wasn't exactly what she wanted, but being able to talk to him like that again, in that moment, was all she could wish for. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, the light shining brightly into them. A small sigh escaped his lips as he sat up. He rubbed his eyes to shake off the sleepiness. Frowning, he looked at his left side. He still felt occasional pain from his amputated arm. He'd heard it was phantom pain, something common, but it felt like something else. He let out a small groan as he got out of bed and headed to the shower. He propped his foot against the wall, summoning fire chakra to shower. With great difficulty, as he did every morning, he washed and combed his hair. He dried himself quickly with a towel and went downstairs. He saw Sakura where he had left her the night before. With a small sigh, he made his coffee, sitting down in front of the knife. "Were you up all night?" he asked, accompanied by a soft whir of the blade. "Sakura?" he asked hesitantly. "Yes, I was up all night." What? Months had passed since they started talking to each other. He had grown accustomed to talking to his sword. Others were still trying to get used to it. "Perhaps you should take a break, get some sleep or something. I don't want you to push yourself so hard." She frowned slightly as she spoke. Sakura hummed for a few more seconds before speaking. "If I hadn't been so conceited, this wouldn't have happened." Naruto shook his head at her statement. "Or I could have swallowed it whole. What happened, happened. We can't change it now. I don't want to see you straining yourself so much over this. Get some rest." "Are you giving me an order?" "No, it's a friend's suggestion. I don't want to upset you about this. If I'd known you'd react like this, I wouldn't have bought the medal." Naruto stood up, finished his coffee, and placed the cup in the sink. "Naruto." Her voice was soft and calm. "Yes, Sakura?" He stopped halfway, his blouse slipping down a little, his left shoulder no longer there to hold it up. He gave a small smile as he pulled it up. Inside, he was furious. "Were you serious when you said from a friend? Are we friends?" Being part of Naruto allowed him to feel the anger that tormented him at that moment, but by formulating his question, he calmed his fury. "Of course, even though we've only just started talking, we've known each other for so long that I couldn't possibly see you as less important. We do argue from time to time, though, but I've heard that's what friends do." She gave him a slight smile. slowly leaving the house and stepping onto the street. Her father would already be at his office. That would be her first stop. He followed the usual procedure, at least for everyone else, waiting for the Hokage to be free before being allowed to enter, escorted by the secretary. The blond man's eyes widened as he watched his son enter like any other person, even giving a small bow. Hokage-sama, I humbly request that we train. Minato looked at his son, his hands clasped. No, he instantly regretted it. A small fire flickered behind Naruto's golden eyes. He hadn't even used his Sharingan during the meeting. Father, please reconsider. Naruto stepped forward, placing his hand on Minato's desk, looking at the blonde man. Sorry, Naruto, I just don't have time right now. Naruto snorted and stood up, shaking his head. Sometimes I wonder if it would have been better if I'd eaten that turtle. Everyone's treated me differently since the incident. I thought you'd be over it by now, but it seems you're just like everyone else. A firm hand rested on Naruto's shoulder. The Uchiha turned to look up and was met with a head of white hair. I'll train you, kid. Thank you, Jiraiya. Which training camp should we meet at? 7. Should bring back memories, huh? His question was answered with a slight smile, a nod, and then he vanished in a flash. Minato turned to look at his former instructor. Is this really the smartest decision? Minato concluded, letting out a small sigh. Naruto isn't someone you can coddle. He has a strong sense of honor. He was an ANBU commander, and besides, I think he could still give me a good chance, even without an arm. He's creative, you know? The white-haired Sannin smiled smugly and jumped out the open window. A silver-haired pervert slammed his book shut, stood up, and stared out the window. Should I let everyone know, Sensei? I expected nothing less. Besides, shouldn't you be training your team? The blonde didn't even bother to look back, hearing the sound of a clone dissipating. I figured as much. Kurenai came face to face with the ANBU wearing the cat mask after opening her apartment door to a rather loud knock. Naruto and I are talking again. Oh, and Naruto's back in town too, and I take back what I said about not getting in the way of you two. Now that I have a chance, I'm taking it. Kurenai crossed her arms over her chest with a slight smile. So, it seems we're rivals again. So it seems. One last thing. He's training against Jiraiya-sama at Training Ground 7. I thought you might be interested to know. Yugao vanished, revealing herself to be just a shadow clone. A small mark appeared on the crimson-eyed woman. Was a fight more important than saying hello? With a new goal in mind, she stormed out of her house, heading straight for the place where the fight was to take place. A large crowd had already gathered. She pushed her way through slowly, only to find herself surrounded. Only then did a woman in a robe with purple hair step forward and take her hand, clearing a path for her. It's good to see you again, Taka. Same here, Kurei-chan. That idiot came back last night, already looking for a fight. I've got front row seats here. Enko spoke, a slight smile playing beneath her mask. She was now a full-fledged member of the executioners. A long sword rested on her back. It was the only weapon the snake mistress deemed suitable for her. Its serrated edge was actually a series of detachable links along a long chain, allowing her to switch from short to mid-range in an instant. So, Gaki, I hope you know I won't hold back with you. The Sannin smiled broadly. Naruto checked that his armor was in place, tying the loose end on the left side. I was hoping you wouldn't. Naruto finished his control, lowered his stance, and his right hand hung over his front leg. It was an ancient style of taijutsu, but based on ultra-fast hand movements, complemented by powerful leg strikes. Some people were whispering, and Enko gasped at what they were saying. Prompted by Kurenai, she replied, They say Naruto lost his arm, and this fight is to prove to himself that he's still fit to be a shinobi. How right they were, Naruto thought exactly that. With a small grunt, he vanished, reappearing next to the Sannin. He raised his leg in the air as he fell. Jiraiya raised his arms to block, feeling the sharp pain of the impact, the ground giving way under the pressure. The fight had begun. Naruto used the Sannin's arms to take flight, vanishing again in an instant. The only one able to see his movements was the Sannin he was training, as the others weren't used to a fight of that caliber. The white-haired man leaped back, forming hand seals as the ground exploded where he had been standing. thanks to an Uchiha fist infused with lightning. The Sannin threw his head back, letting out a torrent of mud. Doton, Yomi Numa, Earth Release, Underworld Swamp. Grinning mockingly as he watched it land around Naruto, seemingly trapping him in place. Naruto smirked and leaped into the air, spinning like a rose. His right hand had already finished sealing by the time he reached the peak. Katon, Namut Iru Sekuru no Asasiki, Fire Release, Morning Breath of the Sleeping Scale. Flames surrounded his body before falling into a cone, covering the swamp beneath him, turning him back into a solid mass. Damn it, I can't trade jutsu for jutsu with him. His chakra reserves are far superior to mine. The Sannin cursed, watching the jet-haired man fall gracefully to the ground, standing on the now dry swamp. Lightning crackled again around his body. It seems he can't use both of his releases at the same time. I can take advantage of that. I wish. Running his thumb along the tips of his teeth, he drew a thin line of blood. Kuchios no jutsu, roared the older shinobi, pounding the ground with his hands. Naruto quickly broke away. A large red toad emerged from the smoke. It was perhaps the size of two Narutos stacked on top of each other. A strange staff in one hand, and what looked like a plate in the other. Gamaken, Naruto is much tougher than last time. Be careful, Jiraiya shouted. Looking up, he saw Naruto brush his hair away from his eyes, changing its golden color to red. It's good to see you again, Kinkoin. I hope that pervert treated you well. Forgive me, Naruto. I'm being a bit rude, the giant toad replied, and Naruto nodded slightly. The crowd was speechless at the sight of such a legendary summoning so close. They were extremely grateful that the executioners had put a barrier between them and the fight. Some of those jutsu looked dangerous. I'd normally scold you for using summons, but I'm glad to see you're not holding back, so I won't either. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, the shadow clone, standing next to the original, inhaled deeply. The Real Naruto held his long hand on the tiger's seal. Katon, Moretsu na Kaze, fire element, blazing wind. Naruto exhaled a faint white flame from his mouth, transforming it into the kanji for wind, and his clone released everything it contained. At first, everyone thought the jutsu had failed. Only when Jiraiya noticed the grass wilting did he realize it was invisible, quickly passing through the seals and sighing. Kirigakure no Jutsu, hidden mist technique. A dense mist rolled in and chilled the air. Now it seemed as if he were fighting in a scorching heat. He wondered how hot the air had been before. Mei, in the crowd, squinted as she watched her village's jutsu being used with such ease. Zabuza smirked from behind his bandages, already knowing what was coming. Naruto closed his eyes, vanishing into the mist and reappearing beside Jiraiya. You know, we can keep using jutsu all day, that's fine by me, but you might want to block this next one. The loyalist said it was deadly. He returned to his spot with a proud smile. Raitun, Akarui Shinku Shoku no Danzu, lightning release, crimson luminous dance. Arcs of red lightning erupted from Naruto's mouth, seemingly vanishing. The Kiri group knew better. Zabuza had described in detail the damage this combination of moves could cause. The movement was so sudden that the red toad barely managed to block with the large plate, a deep crack widening after withstanding the crimson explosion. Naruto slammed 4 more punches into the ground around him, demonstrating the potential damage. The message was clear. Next time I say block, block. The Sage Toad quickly canceled the mist jutsu. It amplified Naruto's lightning release too much to be effective. He was grateful that the air was cool enough to fight now. It seemed the Uchiha's temperature jutsu had vanished. How about we switch to close combat? You clearly have the advantage at long range. The Sannin spoke, sending Gamaken flying back home. He clasped his hands together and extended them, adopting an almost sumo stance. Naruto returned to his stance with a grin on his face. Lightning bolts arced around his body, striking the air and the ground alike. The sound emanating from his jutsu was a piercing roar, nearly threatening to shatter the eardrums of anyone who heard it. Raitun, Shugakatekana Tsuin Sekuru no Kabushi. Lightning release, shocking twin-scale fist. This jutsu is the perfected form of Maisaitiki. I hope you enjoy it. Wanna bet? Naruto smiled smugly, watching as the lightning bolt violently struck the ground, leaving deep wounds. The Sannin swallowed hard at the sight of the damage the jutsu was causing to the ground, even though it had a very strange name. What kind of bet? Pushing his long hair away from his face, the toad sage lowered his stance, summoning earth-release chakra within his body. I'm working on some projects that need your area of expertise. If I win, will you give me a hand? Okay, if I win, you'll have to convince Tsunadeheim to go on a date with me. Naruto tilted his head from side to side, considering for a moment. He glanced at the crowd and saw the blonde Senju staring at him. He gave her a small smile. Okay, he blurted out, a little too pleased. The fury reflected in his eyes did not go unnoticed. He pushed his way through the furious medic and everyone around her. Who said you can make those kinds of deals, Naruto? Roared the Senju, and a look of pain spread across Naruto's face. Do you really have so little faith in me? He chuckled, a beam exploding from his back and launching him toward the toad sage. The man barely parried the blow, only to see the massive explosion of Naruto's fist slam into the ground. He frowned slightly. His taijutsu was rusty, he knew, but he also made sure to note that Naruto was an expert in kenjutsu. Both of them were out of their element right now. Jiraiya looped his hand around Naruto's wrist, holding the boy tightly. The lightning wasn't so bad here. His thin earth-style armor took the brunt of the attack. Sweeping with his leg, he pulled Naruto to the ground, falling behind him and landing on top of him, straddling Naruto's chest. His fist came down quickly, but Naruto dodged his head to the side at the last moment before sending his fist straight into the man's chest. Because of his position, Jiraiya couldn't move in time, feeling the full impact of the lightning attack. Only he felt nothing. He heard the explosion and even saw the flash of lightning leave his back. That's when the name came to the Sannin's mind. The twin scales, every action has a reaction. Their jutsu is the same. Wait, I can't feel my chest. You bastard, ready. With a mocking smile, the wise toad leaped from the Uchiha, as Naruto rose with an incredible display of strength. I think I figured him out. Naruto chuckled and brushed a strand of hair out of his eyes. If you did that, you know this fight is over. The white-haired sage lowered his stance again. There's too much at stake for me to give up. Besides, every jutsu has a weakness. I just have to find it. Naruto grabbed it again, turning his back foot a few degrees as he lifted it to the tip of his toes. How much longer can that earth armor hold? He advanced, leaving a trench in his wake. Jiraiya caught his hand and threw him into the air. Naruto somersaulted as he flew, his feet hitting the barrier. The Sannin let out a small sigh, forgetting about it completely. He was too focused on his jutsu. That's it, the man reflected, bracing himself as he watched the Uchiha bend his legs, flying at speeds unattainable for a human. Naruto managed to hit the pervert's foot, hearing a small cry of pain as the man went flying, shaking his right hand. There, how long did it take you to figure out how to make it work? Much longer than it should be. Also, try moving your hand now. Following Naruto's suggestion, he managed a movement with his right hand and let out a groan, grateful that his body could breathe when it needed to, regardless of his commands. Naruto quickly closed the distance between them, landing blow after blow on the Sannin. In a desperate effort, the Toad Sage threw a powerful right-hand slap, only to strike Naruto in the temple, a sinister smile spreading across his face. I admit it, the white-haired man replied, unwilling to test the waters if he lost control of his face. Letting the lightning subside, Naruto extended a hand toward the Sannin, who gladly accepted it. Even without an arm, you can still pack a punch. It's not so far-fetched to take on the Three Tails. A wide grin spread across the pervert's face. He'll recover in a few years, though I hope I never have to fight him again. It was probably the toughest fight of my life. One wrong move, and it was all over. The crowd slowly dispersed as they both spoke. Only a few remained. A busty doctor glared at them. Naruto, could you explain that little bet to me? Her tone sounded so sweet that her smile was almost deceptive if it weren't for the slight ki emanating from her almost trembling body. I knew I would win. Jiraiya can't beat me in hand-to-hand combat, at least not anymore. Hey, you tricked me, exclaimed the perverted sage, slightly angry at having been deceived by the Uchiha. And what do you mean? The jutsu I use only has one weakness. Naruto patted the Sannin on the shoulder, inflicting a small static shock, which caused the white-haired man to become enraged for a few moments. By no means. The Uchiha nodded. That's either the smartest or the stupidest thing I've ever heard. How did you come up with something like that? Before I went Akiri, I had a lot of free time. Naruto stretched, feeling everything return to its normal position. That was pretty rudimentary. I think we really need to practice our taijutsu, Pervy-chan. Pervert-chan, Tsunade mused, hiding a small giggle behind her hand. You really don't want to know. So, Naruto, when were you planning on telling me you were back? The group turned to see Kurenai standing there with an impassive face, although the concern in her eyes was unmistakable. The truth is, I wanted to surprise you. I was planning to stop by your training once I finished here, but it seems that he decided to leak that the pervert and I were training again. A silver-haired jounin whistled cheerfully from behind his book. Did you say something, Naruto-senpai? Huh. Naruto put a hand to his ear. I said you said something, Naruto. Naruto picked his nose as if he had something inside. When he saw the jounin looking at him, he glanced at him shyly. What? Were you talking to me, Kakashi? The group around him mocked his face as Kakashi hid under a cloud of embarrassment, muttering, beat at my own game. Over and over again. But I hear someone passed their training. How do you feel, Taka? Sometimes, I imagine killing you, slowly, over and over again for signing me up for this. But then I remember that, because you signed me up for this, you had faith that I'd make it. In the end, I'm okay. Wow, kid, that was dark. I'd offer you some training, to test our skills, but my executioner weapon needs 2 hands. Besides, Sakura, he said I can't use any kenjutsu until I return to normal. I didn't do it. A pink-haired genin spoke, earning a confused look from the Uchiha. I'm sorry, not you, Sakura, but my Sakura, that is my sword. Naruto, clutching his head in irritation, realized he wasn't good with children. Can your sword talk, Oni-chan? That's awesome. Hey, why are you calling Naruto-sensei Oni-chan? Because he's my older brother. Why do you call him Oni-chan sensei? Why is he my sensei? The two blondes looked at each other for a moment. Naruto wanted to end his suffering. It was like dealing with 2 Natsumes. So, you 3 are taking the Chunin exams. Team 7 turned fearfully to see who was speaking. The burly man standing there with a sword at his back, the lower half of his face covered in bandages, his hand raised. Hey, I'm talking to you, brats. Oh, what are you doing here without eyebrows? Natsume's outburst provoked mixed reactions. Most burst into laughter. Mei hid hers behind her sleeve, showing some decency. Naruto slowly stroked his closed eyes, pretending to be in another world, while Zabuza seethed with rage. I do have eyebrows, Gaki. They're very thin and fine, unlike those caterpillars you have. Naruto's eyes snapped open, and he slowly turned his head to face Zabuza. Don't you ever insult my little sister again. But she started it, said the Kiri Jounin in shock. Be braver, Zabuza, and back off. Naruto slowly shook his head at the man's antics. You just called me a man, Oni-chan. The little blonde girl replied. Yes, and I can, because I'm your older brother. These are things I must do. No one seemed to notice when some of the group left, leaving Zabuza and his Genin team with Naruto, Kurenai, and Team 7. Naruto stayed a few moments longer. Hey, where did everyone go? Sasuke asked, feeling rather slow for not having noticed it earlier. Haku stepped forward and spoke for everyone. They left while Naruto's shadow clone was playing with you. Besides, Naruto left with Jiraiya almost as soon as we arrived. If you'd been paying attention to your surroundings, you might have noticed. Marishishi looked at Haku, who nodded. I know you saw it, Marishishi, it's okay. Wait, where's Naruto-kun? Kurenai asked, looking around, but she couldn't find a trace of him. She lowered her gaze slightly and stepped back in surprise when she found a note pinned to her chest instructing her to find him at the Uchiha mansion. Well, I have to go. See you later, she said, waving goodbye before using a sunshin to leave. I'm not babysitting again. Behave yourselves and don't kill each other, Zabuza said, turning on his heels and becoming a puddle of water to go somewhere. anywhere but there. Kiri's blonde was about to open her mouth when Haku covered it with his hand. I swear, if you act like a fangirl right now, I'll freeze your lips. Sasuke sighed softly. It's okay. I'm used to it. He gave a slight smile. Marishishi looked at him for a moment before bursting into laughter. Please, Naruto-sama is the only man for me. The blonde laughed, swaying from side to side, as Haku's hand drew dangerously close. Age is just a number. Wait for me, Naruto. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which side you were on, Haku fulfilled his threat. Naruto entered his house, silently placing his hand on Sakura's hilt, feeling that she was asleep. A faint smile touched his face. Unfortunately, it wasn't going to last long, as the doors burst open. I let you go for a few months, and you lose your arm. What am I going to do with you, Naruto? The busted doctor asked, crossing her arms beneath her breasts, making them sway slightly, much to the delight of the Sannin. I don't know, like I said, Sakura said she'd fix it, but for now I'm just waiting. I told her to get some sleep. Apparently, she spent the night working on it. Some looked at him, confused by how casually he spoke about the matter. May let out a small sigh. You'll get used to it, believe me. Kurenai extended her hand politely to the Mizukichi. I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm Yuhi Kurenai, a close friend of Naruto's. It was at that moment that a white-haired man slowly pulled a pad from his jacket. A strong grip prevented him from bringing it close to his face. Don't even think about it, Jiraiya, Tsunade hissed, making him swallow and nod nervously. Mei slowly extended her hand to meet Kurenai's. Terumi Mei, Gode Mizukichi and forever indebted to Naruto-kun. Yugao stepped forward and placed her hand on the other two, thankfully dressed in civilian clothes. Yuzuki Yugao, Naruto's junior Yin-Bu comrade and close friend. The three exchanged a look that screamed one thing. Naruto is mine. The Uchiha looked at them, confused, before surveying the room. Am I missing something? Kakashi and Jiraiya slapped each other. Kami, are you sometimes stupid? Anko went downstairs, dried her hair, and lifted the towel just enough to expose her nipples, which sent two men flying. Naruto just waved, and it was quickly returned. Smells like a cat fight? He joked, leaping and landing silently. The action caused the two men, who were still recovering, to fall backward and hit their heads again. Anko watched as the blood trickling from their noses faded away. Has anyone ever wondered where all this is going? Anko, have you ever heard the saying, curiosity killed the cat? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow as he watched the three girls, who were still staring at each other. It doesn't exactly sound like the most brilliant saying, Oni-chan. Thus, three heads turned to look at the topless girl next to Naruto. Anko, don't you find it strange sitting like that next to Naruto? Kurenai asked, a deep blush spreading across her face. The executioner in question glanced at herself before shrugging. Not really. I mean, she's seen them before. It's something that happens to me too. She ignores him as long as he doesn't try to hug her topless. Honestly, neither of us seems to mind. Anko spoke as if it were a normal conversation. So we could all walk around like this, and you wouldn't mind? Mei asked, dangerously fiddling with the hem of her blouse, as two perverted heads nodded enthusiastically. I didn't say that. I just said it's my thing, find yours. The snake lady pouted. Naruto gestured for the toad sage to come closer, brushing Anko's hair away from her neck, feeling her stiffen at the sight of his exposed mark. I've started considering removing this seal. I have a lot of notes, and I need you to review them to see if I've missed anything or if you can add anything else. Naruto began in a serious voice, something everyone in the room noticed. Yugao was the only one who had ever heard him like this before. Also, I have another seal, one we'll have to work on in private. Jiraiya glanced at Naruto for a moment before nodding. I'll gather some notes and return. We won't be long in finding an answer. Naruto nodded slightly to the Sannin, who nodded in return. The atmosphere changed drastically after that. Naruto walked over to a small shelf, running his fingers along it in certain patterns. The sound of it opening echoed in the air moments later. His solitary hand rummaged through the documents and files inside. Finally, he found the one he was looking for, took it out, put it in his mouth, and closed the shelf again. He looked around and saw everyone staring at what he had just done. Oni-chan, are you all over the house? Anko asked, tilting her head. If you're referring to that locker, then yes. It's the safest way to store information, he replied matter-of-factly, having already removed the file from his mouth. Isn't that a bit extreme? Kurenai asked, earning a quick shake of the head from everyone present. I was the ENBU commander. There are files stored in this house that people would invade for. Mei raised her hands defensively. I can honestly say I have no intention of going against Konoha. Anyway, most of Kiri would be against invading Naruto's home, she said with a radiant smile. Why are you making so much noise? Growled a voice from behind the counter. I'm sorry, Sakura. Do you want me to seal you so you can sleep? Naruto slowly approached his sword. Yugao had heard several times that he could speak, but hearing him and seeing him were two different things. Yeah, idiot, how noisy. She mumbled sleepily. Naruto nodded and used his chakra threads to lift her up and place her back on the seal on his right forearm. So, does anyone still doubt that Sakura can I speak? Naruto looked at the people in the room, all shaking their heads, mouths agape. Mei just smiled happily, already used to it. Naruto looked at the metal of the bench and sighed. It seemed that Sakura had continued after he left. From what it seemed, she must have fallen asleep as soon as they returned. He could see that it was roughly the shape of what was missing. The fingers and everything were already there. He stared at it for a few more seconds, while the crowd slowly moved around him, looking at the metal. What is that? Anko asked. Naruto pointed to his amputated arm and smiled. Sakura, he's making me a new arm, but he wanted this metal to make it. He said it has a special property that will benefit me. Tsunade examined it for a moment. The design was quite good. Looking at the end of the shoulder, she could see the nerves ready to connect to Naruto's body. Hey, Naruto, when that arm is ready, I can help you put it on if you need it. The blonde ruffled his hair, which made him sigh. Thank you, Tsunade. I'll talk to Sakura. Let's see if he needs help. That's how the conversation ended when Jiraiya entered with his notes, instantly diverting Naruto's attention. The Uchiha went to a nearby table, quickly removed its contents, and placed his notes down. The white-haired sage did the same. They sat together, barely exchanging words, just swapping notes, adding and marking things, while the girls watched in amazement. It was rare to see a seal master working on a project, and although Naruto didn't consider himself one, his skills were certainly comparable to Jiraiya's. Watching them both was something they simply couldn't quite process. The toad hermit held up a piece of paper with a strange symbol drawn on it. Naruto looked at it with interest for a few seconds, holding one of his own. Jiraiya leaned forward, taking the paper, placing it on top of his own, with a small frown on his face, turning it a few degrees, placing some pins on it, and showing it to Naruto again. Would that alter your process? Naruto asked, reviewing some of his files again, grimacing at the information. It would be safe to use, the hermit stated, waiting for Naruto to raise his head. Negative effects, asked the Uchiha, his eyes meeting those of his godfather and mentor. Increased libido. Is it necessary, or did you add something? The question made the hermit frown. Naruto got the answer. He slowly stood up from the table and looked around. Most of the girls had fallen asleep. Only Anko and Tsunade were still awake. Tsunade, because she was used to seeing Jiraiya work on a seal, and Anko, because this was something very important to her. Naruto cleared his throat slowly. It seems we've reached a solution. We can either eliminate it entirely or simply remove its controlling function, which means the power would be free for you to use. The only problem is that your inner desire would increase. Naruto held up the design for Anko to review. She could bear to be a little more horny, but the design intrigued her. The stupid seal Orochimaru placed on her would turn into a red rose, the stem wrapping around her shoulder and arm and stopping just past her shoulder blade, the thorns appearing to show her how much time she had left. Anko nodded slightly, approaching and hugging Naruto. Thank you, Oni-chan, thank you, she said, her voice warm and clear. Naruto put down his newspaper and reached up to cup Anko's neck, grateful that she had put on a t-shirt while working. He placed his hand on the back of her neck, gently rubbing it. Okay, Anko, she said in a reassuring voice. The couple walked away slowly. The purple woman wiped away a tear and nodded. When can we start working on it? Tomorrow, for now. I'll need to borrow Pervy-chan to look at a seal in private. Naruto slowly climbed the stairs. The sage followed him. Both Anko and Tsunade looked around at the sleeping figures, with sighs escaping from their mouths. Hey, Naruto, get up. I have things to do. He roared at Sakura from inside the Uchiha's head, forcing him to awaken. With a resigned gesture, he quickly prepared for the day, leaving his temperamental sword next to the metal, just as she had wanted. How long do you think it will take you to finish? It replied with a soft hum. The demonic sword was already hard at work. After a brief pause, the metal changed a little more. If I work without distractions, I should finish tonight, which means we can connect it tomorrow. Also, regarding Tsunade's help, I advise against it, as someone else's chakra could be a problem while connecting the arm. Naruto nodded slightly. All right, I'll let her know. I'll try to keep everyone out of your way. Anyway, I'll be working on Anko's seal for quite some time. About that too. No, you won't use that thing until you train with me again. I don't know what fascinates you about that weapon. The sword sharpened, and Naruto didn't even have to look at her face to know he was getting a death glare. If I used you against her executioner weapon, we'd probably destroy it. So I was thinking of using a weapon of similar quality. Naruto raised his hand defensively. I just think you're too powerful to use in a friendly match. A brief silence fell between them, but Sakura tore it without much concern. Are you flirting with me? Sorry, I'll leave you to your work. Naruto greeted as he poured himself a cup of coffee. That's not a no, the sword clanged, causing Naruto's eyebrow to twitch. Sakura, I wasn't flirting with you. He tried to speak calmly. Why am I not good enough for you? Why are we having this conversation? Naruto asked, completely ignoring the question from his annoying sword. Because I'm bored? She said Sakura as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Sakura? Yes, Naruto. The mocking tone had completely disappeared from his voice. Thank you for this. It means a lot to me. The Uchiha gave her a small smile. Yes. Now get out of my hair so I can get back to work. We'll talk later. Naruto raised his hand, quickly sealed some seals, and placed a small tag near his sword. Its kanji read silence. He let out a small grunt as he opened his front door. The light was incredibly bright, and besides, he hadn't slept much the night before, since he and Jiraiya had worked until the early hours. He walked in and picked up the morning paper. A picture of him and Jiraiya training was on the front page. Toad fights the prince for the princess, he said. Naruto had to stifle the laughter that threatened to erupt. Newspapers would publish anything to sell. With a small sigh, she went back inside. A delicate hand prevented her from closing the doors, though her purple nails were what stood out most. Yugao, why don't you come in? She asked, opening the door again and letting the ANBU member in with a gentle smile. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I saw your picture in the newspaper this morning. You really know how to take pictures. She spoke softly as she walked past him, swaying her hips gently. I guess it's in my blood, he mused as he looked at the photo. It was of him, upside down, surrounded by flames, with a wide grin. A small trickle of mud still flowed from the wise toad's mouth. Behind the pair stood Tsunade, her arms crossed beneath her chest. It was taken before they made the bet, which meant she wasn't frowning. If you keep reading, there are some very strange rumors about how you lost your arm. He took the paper from her hand and smiled slightly, flipping through it and handing it back to her. Did I cut off my arm for a dare? Did I sell it to the devil to gain more power? Are they using it for a ritual to summon a deity to Earth? These people have way too much free time. Naruto chuckled. These claims were ridiculous, but Yugao seemed to find them incredibly entertaining. My favorite is that you cut it to get the attention of someone special. She giggled as she finished, a slight blush on her face. That's probably the stupidest thing I've ever heard. He put the newspaper down on the bench with a low grunt. I think it's kind of romantic. Maybe you need a little romance in your life. A small pout appeared on her face as the Uchiha turned away. She made herself a cup of coffee. Yugao looked at the sword on the bench, her hand slowly moving forward, wondering what it would be like to hold it. I tried it once, it's not my thing. Do you want a cup? And don't touch Sakura, she's busy right now. He didn't even turn around and caught her completely off guard. The idea was fun. I'd love to, thank you. Also, I heard you kissed Mei and Karina. I thought romance wasn't your thing. She was glad Naruto didn't turn around. His sad expression would have betrayed his feelings. It was more like they kissed me. I just responded in kind, she said, leaving the cups on the bench. Yugao moved and stood beside him. So, hypothetically, if I were to make the first move, would you respond in kind? Her hand ran over her civilian clothes, white pants and a blouse. It was simple, but comfortable. Her hand rested against the side of her face, her gaze impassive. Didn't you realize that you were always the one who made the first move? His question made her reflect. It was always she who invited him to her quarters during his time in ANBU. It was always she who pushed him onto the bed before slowly rubbing her body against his. Gently, she pushed him against the bench, a playful smile on her face. Her hands snaked around and gripped the back of his neck, pulling him closer. Naruto's arm encircled her waist, lifting her and turning them, pressing her firm buttocks against the top. Her brown eyes met his red ones. Lust blazed in her eyes. Her legs spread wide before entangling around his hips. She wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. Leaning forward, she pressed her lips against his, the small tingle of their high-affinity right tongue running through her lips. She pressed harder, tracing her lips along his entrance, begging him to let her in. Naruto's arm shifted and he sat beneath her bottom, lifting her a little higher before opening his mouth, feeling his tongue quickly enter, seeking every inch of what he used to claim as his own, his hands tracing her long black hair, causing her to tremble with pleasure. It was the only thing he ever had on top of him. Ever since he discovered that he liked having his hair played with, he always made an effort to do just that, whenever they were like this. A low whistle came from the stairs. Yugao almost spun her head around at lightning speed to glare at whoever had interrupted her time with Naruto. I certainly wasn't expecting to see that person this morning, Anko said, lazily descending the steps in her robes and armor, her mask wrapped around her waist. I'm glad to see you so early, Anko, Yugao managed to say calmly, with a forced smile on her face and her legs still wrapped around her Tizuchiha. It's good to see you too, Yugao. Are you having fun on your perch? Asked the hawk, smiling as the cat blushed. Are you ready for today's new seal, Gaki? Naruto's voice interrupted their conversation, and both pairs of eyes turned to look at him. Yes, I'm just going to train a little. I went downstairs to get a coffee before I left, Anko replied, pointing to her sword and mask. I just heated the pot. It should be ready to use, he said with a smile, pleased that his little sister was taking her new task seriously. Looks like the pot wasn't the only thing that got hot in here. The executioner chuckled at the Umbu's reaction. He said the Umbu's legs slowly uncoiled, giving Naruto a quick kiss before collapsing to the ground. A giggle caught Naruto's attention, and he looked around for the source. Hey, Oniai-chan, are you okay? She shook her head quickly. Was she hearing things again? It was nothing, if you'll excuse me. He lowered his head and left the room, leaving two women with purple hair staring at him strangely. His feet touched the soft grass beneath him, and he slowly opened his eyes. He always enjoyed entering his mental world. He imagined a large cave and vanished in a flash of lightning that reappeared before him, a pair of large red eyes staring at him. Kid, we need to fix the seal. Did he laugh earlier? The look he received from Kurama was all he needed to know. Now it's starting to affect you on the outside. This isn't something you can fight, Naruto. You just have to seal it away, burn its key, and scatter its ashes at sea. The big fox lowered his gaze with concern. His enclosure was reasonable. He let him out occasionally, but overall it wasn't a disaster. I've enlisted help to do just that. Hopefully, we can get rid of him for good. Naruto frowned as he heard the creature shake its cage. Is he causing you a lot of trouble? I burn him when he starts rambling. His shouting is better than listening to him talk to himself. The bijou broke into a wide smile, which made Naruto laugh fondly. Would you like to take a walk in the outside world? Naruto held his hand on the ram seal, waiting for his tenant's answer. It would be better if I stayed inside you for a while. Our friend might try something if I'm not around. The big fox groaned, which made Naruto nod, understanding. Thank you for your efforts, Kurama. The water beneath him was calm, indicating that he had emerged safely from the mental landscape. Naruto slowly surveyed his surroundings for a few moments, a mocking smile playing on his lips. You're improving, Zabuza. But you were worried I'd sense you. That hesitation gave you away. Don't think about stalking your prey, just do it. With a flick of his wrist, he flung a kunai into the air, embedding it so deeply into the tree behind which Zabuza was hiding that the point grazed his shoulder. The action caused a small gasp from the bandaged ninja. Zabuza carefully stepped out and revealed himself to Naruto, raising his hand in a small gesture. "What are you doing here?" he asked, snapping his fingers as if indicating the small clearing that surrounded the lake. "Talking with Kurama. I thought I'd test how well my body reacts to acting on its own. Since I'm not soaked, I'd say it worked well." Naruto craned his neck, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a white stick. He placed it at the corner of his mouth and quickly lit it. "If Mei catches you doing that, she'll kick your ass again." The ninja swordsman smiled smugly as he saw a small twitch on Naruto's forehead. "I think it's more likely that he's going to scold me again for leaving him. We hardly ever fight anymore. He seems embarrassed when we do," Naruto said calmly. The rustling of nearby leaves caught his attention. He frowned as he watched the person leave. "Oh, Mei, we were just talking about you." Zabuza's smile widened before disappearing, leaving them alone. Her green eyes narrowed as she looked at the smoking shinobi. "It's not good for you." That was all she said, stepping closer and hugging him, her brow furrowed. "But I know you only do it when something's bothering you. Do you want to talk about it?" she asked, looking into his thoughtful expression. "It's just that it's gotten a little out of hand, more than I expected. With proper management, it won't amount to anything." He stubbed out his cigarette, looking at it for a moment before tossing it aside, and hugged Mei. "We'll hug tonight, okay?" Naruto looked at her with his red eyes. "Maybe I'll get my arm back tonight." His grip tightened, and he rested his head on her chest. "Actually, yes," Sakura said that if no one distracts her, she'll be fine by tonight. Naruto shifted his arm to his left side. "It's rather strange, thinking how close I am to getting my arm back. It feels like we've been separated for so long. I wonder what to do first. I've had to let so many things go." Mei looked at him with a slight smile. "You still owe me a massage." "Anko, stay still." Naruto, impassive, with the paintbrush dangling from the corner of his mouth as he prepared the appropriate ink. "But it tickles Oniai-chan." The hawk-masked executioner replied with a small pout, her arms crossed under her bust, her breasts pressed tightly together as she sat on the stone floor in baggy pants. Naruto shook his head. Having finished preparing the special ink he needed and placed it on a table beside him, Jiraiya was putting the finishing touches on the stem and thorns. With the easy part over, the sage and the Uchiha rejoined. Once they began, they would only have a few minutes to finish redrawing the seal. They were confident they could do it, but that meant drawing both parts of the seal at the same time. The two exchanged a glance. Naruto slowly removed the toothbrush from his mouth. The toad sage performed a few hand seals and placed his hand on Anko's forehead. "When you wake up, we'll be finished," Jiraiya said softly. She nodded slightly before slowly drifting off to sleep, a smile on her face. Once he closed his eyes, the Uchiha frowned. "We need to be quick and precise. I'll stick with the outer seal. It's the kind of seal I've worked on a lot before." "Great, give me the hard part." "No, it's okay, I understand what you mean. You spent most of your time working on distribution seals, while I'm focusing on the modification," Jiraiya said, forcing a smile. They both nodded quickly and got to work. Both sealers used the same ink to eliminate any contamination. Naruto had to take a few moments to catch his breath right at the end. His phantom pains had started again. Taking a deep breath, he carried on, finishing the last details on the petals, watching the seal formula snap into place and close. The thorns glowed brightly for a few moments, slowly dimming and settling. The seal spoke well, their ink had dried. Now all that remained was to wait. Orochimaru's would soon rot, and then they'd be finished. "Hey, kid, didn't you have anything better to do?" Naruto shook his head in response to the elder sage. "Sakura needed a couple more hours. In fact, I expected the sealing to take a little longer." The Uchiha took a few steps back, leaning against the wall, and looked at Anko. "She'll be fine. You can even wake her up if you want." "I'd rather wait for the snake seal to disappear before awakening it. It hates that it's been there so long." Naruto replied, watching a small trail of ink trickle down his back. The final stage had begun. Now was the time to let his chakra settle. While the seal wasn't the most chakra-intensive shinobi art, it could certainly disrupt it enough to unsettle even the most controlled users. The last cursed seal finally vanished. The seal took full control of the chakra and spun violently. The petals closed over the bud, slowly opening into a purple rose. In the end, they managed to make it look more like a tattoo than a seal, something Anko could easily consider a drunken souvenir. He slowly approached and ruffled her hair. His chakra was enough to rouse her. As he did so, her eyes snapped open, staring at Naruto for a few moments, slowly taking in his wide grin. "Can you pass us a mirror, Pervy-chan?" Naruto asked. The sage did just that, a dazzling smile on his face. The look of pure joy on Anko's face made it all worthwhile. She pressed herself against the Uchiha's chest, clinging tightly as she sobbed, babbling, "Thank you," over and over. The two sat there for nearly 15 minutes, and Naruto glanced at his mentor for a few moments. "Could you take her to her room? She's fallen asleep." "Normally I would do it, but it turns out I can't lift her with one arm anymore. Either I've lost my fitness, or she started gaining muscle mass." A perverted chuckle escaped the mouth of the white-haired Sannin. "Of course I can. So you'll leave her there, fully clothed, and then come downstairs, right, Pervy-chan?" Naruto's cold voice received a stern nod. Anko got up from his body a moment later and went upstairs. Naruto followed closely behind, taking off his shirt and removing his bandages. This was going to be painful, he had no doubt about it. He shuffled to the kitchen, a small sigh escaping his lips. "Sakura, he had just finished his arm." "Finally finished, huh?" A tired voice chirped from the bench. Naruto felt a mocking smile at the corner of his mouth. "Yes, we finished a while ago. We talked and hugged for a bit. You know, normal Anko stuff." "How was she?" Her question brought a broad smile to his face. The happiness and relief he saw in Anko had truly made all the effort he'd put into studying the seal worthwhile. Excited, happy. That seal had caused him far more trouble than we know, but now it seems he just got drunk and got a tattoo. A very expensive one. "How long has it been since you last got one?" There was a faint buzzing sound from the pink and black leaf. "A few minutes." "This is going to hurt a lot, isn't it?" "Are you nervous, Uchiha Naruto?" The same man who was stupid enough to face the three tails, afraid of having an arm reattached? He sneered. Sakurov, the man with jet black hair, smiling broadly in his mind. "You didn't answer my question," he growled. "Remember that time Snake told you to rub that muscle gel where you know where?" Naruto visibly shrank at the thought. "I'm glad to see you remember. It'll probably be worse." The look of horror on her face made it all worthwhile. "That is, if we do it without painkillers or chakra anesthesia." Mei was kind enough to go to the hospital to pick up some of the high-quality stuff. "Kurama will also anesthetize the area with his demonic chakra. Your job is to stay awake and connect with your arm. I'll make sure all the nerves connect properly, as well as forcefully opening the ones Kurama blocked." The large doors opened, and Mei entered with her usual sway, carrying a brown bag with a tag. "I got what you asked for. I spoke with Tsunade for a while, and now I'm here. I was talking with Sakura for a bit. I want to be present when this happens. This is mostly my fault, so I decided to support you." She already said it's okay, and besides, I've already made up my mind. Please don't resist. Mei stepped forward and placed the bag on the bench. "Here you are, Sakura." "Okay, Naruto, drink and take the shot. After that, I need you to reopen the wound. Before you look at me like I'm crazy, listen to what I'm saying. Once you've done that, seal me inside you and bring the new arm to the wound. Kurama and I will take care of the rest. Mei, keep him awake. This will be painful even with all the drugs," Sakura explained, ignoring Mei's worried look. She'd heard the sugar-coated version, but there was a slight difference. The former commander did as he was told, took the painkillers, opened the wound, blood gushed from his side and splattered the ground, placed his hand on Sakura watching as she disappeared inside his body, placed his hand on the new arm for a moment, slowly taking it and bringing it to the cavity, felt a sharp stab of demonic chakra leaving his body and taking over him. Pain coursed through his entire body as he fell to his knees. His vision blurred, green, blue, and red spots moved around him. Panicked screams echoed in his ears. He felt something pressing on his chest, squeezing him tightly. The words repeated themselves over and over, forcing his ears to decipher them. "Stay with me, Naruto-kun. You can handle this." His eyes began to close. A sharp pain shot through his face. Then they snapped open and stared at him. "Forgive me, but you have to stay awake. Stay awake, Naruto-kun." His voice forced him to nod. It was weak, but it was still there. "We're almost done with Naruto. Just a couple more minutes, and you'll be able to do it." The pain only worsened, his body entering a state of accelerated healing thanks to Kurama. The skin slowly wrapped around the metal arm, melting completely as always. His vision slowly began to normalize. May's face was before him, tears streaming down her face, her eyes fixed on his red eyes fixed on hers. "Hello, how are you?" Her voice was dry and rough, and he felt her hands slowly move from his body to his face. "Me? I'm fine, and you?" Her eyes slowly scanned the blood covering her body, her brow furrowing slightly. "It hurts. How long have we been like this?" "Almost half an hour, although it's almost over. I thought you'd lost control a bit." She was terrified. That was obvious. You could hear it in her voice. He lowered his head slightly, revealing his chest. "You started scratching him, as if you were trying to escape." "Huh. I might have tried to pin you to the ground at that moment. Even without knowing what you're doing, you're very strong." "It feels like so long," he groaned, almost falling forward. May caught him. "See, let me help you. You don't always have to do everything alone." She bit her lip, trying to calm herself. Naruto flexed his arms, discovering he had some control over the newcomer, though he was too stiff. "I'm just putting the finishing touches on it. Try not to mess with it," he shouted to Sakura from the inside. Naruto looked at the arm, watching as his skin adhered to the rest of his body. Her right arm contracted as chakra spread through her body, acting as a protective shield. Something soft pressed against her lips, and her eyes slowly took on May's face. The couple separated, with a mischievous smile on their faces. "See? You're almost done." Naruto nodded, and a few minutes later all the pain disappeared. Sakura Kurama gave his approval. Looking at his arm for a few moments, he channeled a small amount of lightning chakra through it, watching as the lightning bolts flew around, his mouth wide open. "It seems I need to get used to this again, but right now I just want to sleep." He sat up groggily and put an arm around May as the two walked through the dark corridors.